Well, welcome everyone. I'm here at Meaningful Ageing Australia in Melbourne with Ilsa Hampton, who's the CEO of Meaningful Ageing Australia. And thanks, Ilsa, for the opportunity to sit down and chat with you about what you do in a time and a context in Australia where spiritual care in aged care is a really, really important question and issue. We have a bunch of different students from various different backgrounds, counselling and ministry and pastoral spiritual care in various institutions. So they'll be receiving this with real gratitude and as part of our conversation that we're engaged in fact, nearly coming to the end of semester. Ilsa, I wonder if you'd just spend a short time telling us a little bit about yourself and your role here and what you think are the primary personal goals for you in this role at Meaningful Ageing Australia.
Okay, thanks Chris, and hi everyone. So Meaningful Ageing Australia is a membership-based not-for-profit organisation. Our members are organisations and groups that are supporting older people. So we've started by really focusing on aged care, community and residential aged care, but we're not limited to that. So eventually, hopefully, you'll see us doing things in other parts of the community. The main thing we do is produce practical resources to help organisations understand and respond to the spirituality of older people. Spirituality understood in that broad sense around meaning, purpose and connectedness in people's lives and connectedness with self, others, creativity, nature and something beyond ourselves. And as you would know, for a lot of people that has a faith expression, but for a whole lot of others it doesn't. And so what we're really working hard to do is help people see that this is a shared story, that we're all part of this. Older people all have a spirituality, we all have a spirituality. We also do some direct education and advocacy with government and key agencies. So we're the peak body for spiritual care and ageing. So for me, in terms of my particular role, being a fairly small organisation, I get to do all sorts of different things. Lots of strategic planning, and the advocacy work is mainly sits with me. So that's meeting with the Minister for Aged Care, meeting with the Shadow Minister for Ageing, Aged Care, or Seniors, whatever title they're giving it at the time. Meetings with the Department of Health. Also I used to connect with the Australian Aged Care Quality Agency, now they're called the Quality and Safety Commission. So connecting with them. Then there's other peak bodies that are working in the space, AXA, LASER, Palliative Care Australia, Spiritual Care Australia, Spiritual Health Victoria, and so on. So there's lots and lots of networking. There's also lots of connecting with aged care providers. So people that are working within our member organisations as well as people that aren't. I'll also do a lot of planning around, we have something called a project pipeline. Because we're mainly producing practical resources, we need to have a good eye on what we're working on now, what we're going to be working on 6 months, 12 months down the track, so that I guess we don't sit still, which can sound kind of odd, I suppose, in a spiritual care context where we want to encourage people to sit still. But really we have to function as a business as well. So no one's throwing money at us, but if you'd like to, I can give you my details.
There you go. So you're speaking about innovative approaches to organisational spiritual care and how you engage, encourage, create understanding, research. We draw on the evidence, the published evidence that's around about spirituality and spiritual care and ageing. We look for opportunities to get involved in research projects, but that's always hard because a serious research project really does need funding most of the time. We also use a kind of product development process, which does include conversations with older people and with people working in aged care. So there's sort of, I guess it's informal research kind of project development sense. So working with institutions, particularly given that spirituality is a concept that can be somewhat mistrusted in Australian culture, what are the challenges that you find as an organisation in terms of encouraging aged care providers to understand spirituality and the role it has not only in people's individual lives but as their whole approach as an organisation in terms of offering care in a spiritually robust way?
The first challenge really is that a very large number of people continue to assume that spirituality equals religion in a very linear way. So we find that, that just comes up again and again. In fact, just this week I was meeting with another organisation that I won't name, but they're doing work in the community with seniors, and I'd previously made an approach to their previous CEO about me doing a bit of a session to unpack a bit about contemporary spirituality and spiritual care, and that hadn't really come off. They said that the agenda was full or something, and maybe to revisit the question down the track. Talking to the new CEO, and they are going to engage with us now, but he said, I think you were trying to talk to us earlier, but no one really wanted to talk to you because they thought it was all about religion. And it's like, there's the irony. So they wouldn't let me in the door to even be able to explain to them that it's not all about religion. And this is going on, really all the time. So that is a significant challenge. However, we've now got some fantastic leverage because the new aged care quality standards, where we've done a lot of advocacy work, us and our members and other organisations, to try to get those new quality standards positioned in a much more holistic way. We've been fairly successful in that. So we've got a new reason to ask organisations to think about these things, not just because of a kind of, a moral or an ethical imperative, which is where some of the faith-based organisations, for them, they'll say, well, of course, this needs to be part of what we do. There's challenges there because quite often, if you've got, say, a pastoral care team, that team will tell you that the staff don't really understand what they do. Now, different organisations are at different stages with that, but it is very difficult because of there's a community perception which is basically mirrored within the aged care workforce, which is this linear spirituality equals religion. And the internal processes that are triggered for people around that mean that they don't even realise, I guess, the blocks that they're putting up.
Absolutely. Do you want to say just a little bit more about the quality standards, what they are, and how what kind of spiritual care language part of those quality factors? Do you want to just say a little bit more about how that?
Sure. Yeah. So the new Australian Aged Care Quality Standards are coming into effect from the 1st of July this year, and they're covering all aged care services. So that's one of the, innovations, is that the government has tried to simplify things for the aged care sector. To bring them all into one set of standards, and there are some elements that won't apply if you're not, for example, doing residential aged care. There's 8 standards, and there's a contribution can be made by spiritual care across all of those 8 standards. And then there's some specific lines so there's lots of language around wellbeing and quality of life, and then there's specifically people's spirituality is also mentioned. There's some guidance material that sits behind those standards, which we also did quite a bit of work to try and provide some framing and language. And so if you look at that guidance material, I've got a PowerPoint slide and a series of slides, and we've got a fact sheet, in fact, which I could give you to share with the group, the fact sheet of the quality standards, and you'll just see the number of references to meaning, purpose, connectedness, identity, and people's religious, spiritual, emotional needs. So it is actually, whilst we would say that people's religious needs are intrinsically to do with their spirituality, they've separated them out, and the important thing there is that it suggests the idea that there is a spirituality without necessarily having a faith there. So it's everywhere. Really exciting.
That's really exciting. And to what extent are these related to accreditation of institutions and so on? Is that all part of that same process?
Yes, So this is replacing the old accreditation standards and the community care common standards. This is what organisations are going to be assessed against. So it also includes things around the workforce needing to be equipped. It talks about empathy and compassion and all sorts of things. So there's a bit of a sense now that the aged care sector maybe hasn't quite got their head around the magnitude of the change for them. And it's also not only about the aged care sector. There's, if people have been following some of the commentary about aged care, there's a lot of issues around the formation of staff to then come and work in aged care. The training for personal carers are 70% of the aged care workforce, and that qualification is woefully inadequate for the complexity of the work that they need to do, and that doesn't include anything particularly around spirituality or spiritual care. So we've got capability building that needs to happen in current organisations, but then there's also this future workforce need to be prepared appropriately for the work that they need to do.
Absolutely, yeah. I wonder if you want to say anything about the Royal Commission and the impact that's having on the whole sector. We're just sort of beginning that process, and all kinds of stories are surrounding that process and so on. What do you think the implications are for Meaningful Ageing Australia and for institutions who are attempting to bring a spiritual care approach not only to their organisation but to the way they deliver care and so on?
Yeah. The Royal Commission, it's necessary because I think there hasn't been the political will to deal with the issues confronting the aged care sector and make the structural change that's needed for an appropriate care response where people can thrive. Now, having said that, there are lots and lots of examples of beautiful, excellent aged care and wonderful support, and I'm sure people in your classes have had, I hope they've had really positive experiences with aged care. So it's not that the whole thing's rotten, but the examples that are coming up, it's very clear that there's lots of issues. That a lot of these issues have been talked about within the sector for a long time. And actually the government has commissioned work even before the Royal Commission. Like, they did a total review of the workforce and the future needs of the workforce that was completed last year. And in that review it was identified that, for example, the personal care role was really inadequately positioned and the pay was terrible, and there's a whole strategy around that now, which we also fantastically we were able to have some input into that, and they've picked up some of our materials and included the idea of living well as being, what is it that aged care support should be all about? It's to help people to live well, which includes their spirituality, for example. So there's been and the new quality standards are an attempt to get the reform happening that's needed. But then, Royal Commission has come in, which is really, I guess, airing the dirty laundry, if you like. So, what are the implications? We're still seeing, operationally it's quite a hard time because organisations are very focused on responding to the Royal Commission, which means that they're not necessarily free to respond to some of the things that we're wanting to engage with them on. However, some of the themes that are coming up around people essentially not feeling seen and heard. There are hearts that are being broken in this process of engaging with aged care, and that aligns sort of exactly with what we're trying to help people do is keep that heart and soul in the service provision, including within the staff as well as in the way then that they're relating with older people. And the commissioners, interestingly, have both used some language that suggests to me that they have an eye for these things. So one of them's talked about their sacred duty, the sacred duty of aged care, and another one's talked about love and that the love's missing. And I thought, fascinating to sort of see that that's the language that's coming out even from the commissioners. So we'll wait and see what the recommendations are, and then we will wait and see if whatever government is in power actually implements them.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it feels, just based on what you're saying, that all of those questions and issues tap into one of the big questions we ask in spiritual care and aged care, and that is how do we make sure we retain a sense of our humanity in an institutional context, because institutions are forms of our collective attempts to care for one another, but they come with inherent risks, and the inherent risk might be something around that sense of losing one's sense of humanity, connectedness, meaning, and all of those things that are at the core of spiritual care. So you guys are right at the heart of some of those most important questions around what it means to be a human person aging in Australia today. So congratulations on fantastic work and the gradual greater impact that you're having in the sector. And looking forward to seeing further development as it unfolds. Thanks, Ilsa, very much for sharing with us today and for contributing to our conversation in the virtual classroom around Australia.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Good on you.